Welcome to episode 5 of the Slow Learner podcast. This week's guest, Trent McClellan. He's a comic from This Hour Has 22 Minutes and a fantastic person who I've known for about 20 years and ran into off and on and always been impressed with from afar. And this episode, he lets us in on some of the sort of mental secrets of his success, along with the way he copes and deals and interacts with the world and faces challenges using humor, using mindfulness, and using a lot of neuroscience and psychology that we're going to get into. Quick trigger warning. Now, we discuss medically assisted suicide and male suicide. So if those are particularly sensitive to you, be aware and take care of yourself. We do make some jokes about it, not meant to mock it, but meant to engage with it and make space for it as we discuss the topic. And I am excited to get going. Our guest, whose comedy special dropped last week on YouTube called Worry Muffins. Make sure you check that out after you check this out. And also, make sure you leave some feedback. Click like. Email us back at theslowlearner.com. That's the website. You can find our emails there. All the links to this, all the links to Trent's stuff. And we're excited to have you for episode 5. Now let's get going.
I was gonna say, like, I love how you two would get told you have radio voices or podcaster voices. The comment I get from students is you should do ASMR. And I didn't know what that was the first time I heard it. I'm like, oh, that? And then I realized it's like you could make an income eating potato chips in front of a mic, and all of a sudden I was interested again because you can have all these different ASMR videos of different types, which is crazy. But yeah.
Which student told you that? Were they dressed like a kitten?
No, just wearing the hat with the ears or whatever, which is fine. I've heard that more than once, actually. So this was actually like a holdover from COVID because during COVID, you rarely saw someone eye to eye when you were teaching. So all of your stuff is videos. So they, listen to the video and it's like, I listen to your video as I fall asleep. I'm like, okay, is that good? Is that bad? Or another one you would get, and this is just reflects how we consume content, right? Is like they'll meet you in person, they'll have no idea who you are. And I've heard this more than once. It's like, oh, that's your voice at normal speed. Because no one listens to anything exactly how it is anymore. It's just an absurd thing about media these days.
Well, I should introduce you guys. Trent,
Yeah, please do.
This is
Sorry.
Professor Whissell. He's a professor of neuroscience at the university I attended.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Really excited about this.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and he was actually my professor for like three classes, I think. Was it
That's
three?
amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, you survived the ordeal, and for some reason, it's like, let's keep talking, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do this even though we don't have to. Let's keep the connection going. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. There's no reason at all, and nothing's being graded. Everyone's got their certificates and so on, yeah.
Exactly. We're
It's
equals.
fun. It's fun. Everybody likes neuroscience, and who wants to stop when the bell rings? Did you stop learning? Did you? No.
Exactly.
That's the thing. The remark about equals, I really like that because it's in a weird sense, like after you find out someone's like a performer and a successful one, it's kind of like, oh, okay, because that kind of like I don't want to say it doesn't make things different, but you do think about it because it's just like you're dealing with someone who's been on TV, who's performed in front of thousands of people or whatever. And sometimes like even
Canadian entertainment, hundreds.
Canadian. Oh, that doesn't count. It still counts. It's fantastic. Are you kidding?
No,
I've
that's a
listened
sarcastic
to the
joke.
stuff.
It
It's
doesn't
good.
apply anymore.
Yeah. But so it works the other way too. Like I, in some ways, like every time I meet one of you all, and I'm really excited to get to know you a little better. It's like, oh my God, I've seen your stuff, But I find if you show that excitement, it makes things way worse. So I'm always like, oh, great, shake her hand. It's nice,
I know. I remember the first time after I graduated from high school, I ran into one of my high school teachers at a bar, and I was legally allowed to be in there, but I'm like, oh, I should go because you're having. And I go, I don't know, it was Mr. Carey or something. I said, hey, Mr. Carey, how are you? He's like, you don't have to call me Mr. Carey. I'm like, yeah, but you're still Mr.
Yeah, you're still the
trying to
teacher, right?
process
Yeah.
that this was a human being outside of the school
Yeah.
who had a beer at a bar. My mind was
It
blown,
is. It is pretty crazy. I had something similar happen recently too. Like I was at an actual this was a career-related event, and then we went out to, do whatever afterwards. And so I ran into a student downtown Toronto, midnight at an intersection. Like, oh, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm sorry. It was like just this super weird thing. It's like, well, I go out too, it's like, can I help you with your study guide? Like I didn't know what to say. It was super weird to see someone after 5 p.m. with no clear reason. But yeah, all
Yeah,
these people are people outside their main job or main role or whatever, yeah.
yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna jump right into a brain question for you, Dr. Whissell. Is
Yeah.
that an example of code shifting?
Code
When we do that?
shifting.
Yeah. Like, you know how that we manifest different sort of composition of identities and moods that are sort of aligned between the context of the environment that we slip in and out of? That seems like,
I
so like people that immigrate to the country, often they'll code shift between their original culture and then the new culture so that they can function.
That's actually really interesting. So I love academics putting a sophisticated word on something we all know we do. So the idea of situationally modifying your behavior, something that's like, if you're talking to your friends back home, you have more of that accent. And when you don't, like little things like that, which I've noticed are interesting, and it could apply to like social norms and other things. So it's kind of like if someone knows me as a professor, you have to act like a professor. And I'm sure your performers, the both of you do this all the time. Did you ever feel constrained by that? Or do you like when you have a fan or someone talk to you, like how is that for you on that side?
Yeah, I don't know if Pete had this experience, but I used to always feel like you had to be on. Like when
Okay.
you met someone outside of the world, like they expect that of you in that moment. And so
Hmm.
you have to go straight into being funny. And then you get
Oh,
to a certain age where you're like, you're just gonna get what I got today. And if that's just me, you know what I mean? Like just
yeah.
like,
Well,
hey,
that's
how
a
are you? Nice to meet you. I'm a normal human
yeah.
being. And then if they walk away less than impressed, like, well, he wasn't that funny. It's like, yeah, man. Like I always compare it to this. Do you think musicians just sing to you all day if
Yeah.
you met them in the street? Like,
Hmm.
ask me a question, I'll sing you the answer. Like so
Yeah.
I realized what do I want to do in this situation? Why don't I do that as opposed to trying to meet some expectation that I've already made up in my mind as to what they expect. I don't know
I,
if you had the same, Pete.
No, I think that's maybe why a lot of people date musicians because they think they're going to do that. Um, Nobody wants to hear jokes all day, but a nice song all day?
Where's his
Yeah.
guitar?
Where's
Like,
Buble now?
oh my God.
I'm actually, I think I've been on the other side of that, weirdly enough, where I've been kind of a friend, and then I revealed my fanness, and
Hmm.
I felt that the friendship got weird.
Oh.
I have two distinct encounters like this where I was hanging out like a friend. First was with Rich Hall.
yep.
We spent like a week working with him, great time hanging out, and then I drove him to the airport. And the same thing is what triggered it both times. Is I asked him if I could get a picture with him, and it was the most awkward. All the friendship out the window. Like,
Oh my
what?
God.
Why would this is what? Do you normally take a picture with who you drop off at the airport? Like, I'm like, and
Just a tradition I have.
I do it
Yes,
with
I
cab
do.
drivers, with
Yeah.
my mom. It
Yeah, I
doesn't
was
matter.
gonna say, I know people that do that, that do the goodbye picture. It's like, hey, we're at the airport, great trip. Oh
But
my
I tried
God.
to
Yeah.
explain it to him earnestly from the fan side of me. And I told him that he made this movie when he's on SNL, where he cut the imprints of his shoes out of the pad that opens the doors at grocery stores. I don't know if you remember this short film that he made. And then he put it on his shoes and he walked to bank machines and they opened up and he took all the money and he walked to anything and it would just open up whatever he stood in front of. And the very last scene is he put them on the bottom of a pair of shoes and left him in a gift box in front of his boss's door. And then the boss puts him on and walks to the elevator and just falls in. And I said it was such a huge inspiration for me. He's like, all right, take a picture.
You won me back over. Okay, flattery will get you everywhere. Yeah. Oh
The
my
second one
God.
was at Halifax Fest last time I was there when Dylan Moran was there.
Yeah, yeah.
And we
Oh.
spent all night hanging out, having a great time. Went to the airport, and I asked him for a picture, and he literally pulled his jacket over his head and ran from me, and wouldn't even talk to me on the flight, and kept away the rest of the time. And there was
Sorry.
no recovery from it. There's just no
I
recovery.
gotta check. Is that? I'm sorry. I don't. I'm not sure. I know. Is that the Irish comedian? I think it was
Yeah,
Dylan Moore.
yeah, Black
Yeah, okay.
Books.
Yeah. Okay, because I'm like, oh, no way. Because I have searched long and hard among my contemporary circles, people don't know about him. And I'll mention it. It's like, you haven't heard of this? This is amazing stuff. But yeah, it just, the vibe of his comedy, that reaction almost makes sense.
Oh yeah,
It just
I
like,
should I
yeah,
should have used a bit of my like, what is this guy about before I
yeah,
ask for this.
yeah. Like, judging by your style, or you, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Well, I think that too, that's because you're elevating that person in that moment, and they just want to be part of the pack.
Yeah,
Especially comedians, I think quite often they're like, "Hey man, like let's throw all credits out the window. We're just comics here hanging out, talking shit about, our industry." And I have the same thing. I've met some big names, and I'm like, man, I'd love to get a photo, but I know it will automatically change the dynamic in this room right now. And I want to be seen not as a equal, but just
yeah.
as one of your peers. And so we don't have that awkward moment. And but then I think, oh man, how many photos could I have gotten with amazing people? And it's like, so you have that, that balance and that sacrifice.
It's a huge trade-off risk, like even for people I've known for years that I like, oh, God,
It's
people
yeah,
don't
it's
believe you're my friend.
yeah.
Can we get into this as proof that we actually know each other?
So my friends don't believe it. You should have added that, just at the end. It's just like make them. So for me, whenever I interact with somebody that's no longer a student or knows me in like a teaching capacity and talks to me about that, my biggest fear is always that in some way I'm going to disappoint them by being so normal. Like I get hungry, I get sleepy, I make mistakes and so on, just like you. And I'm like, don't say anything. So for me, it's a lot of pressure when somebody does that. It's actually relieves a burden when they talk to you normally in some ways. So I can see that being kind of nice. In the second they're like, can I take a picture? I think that dream goes away in an awful hurry. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
I
almost
think
did
with
that
big
in
celebrities too, that they have those two personas. There's the real me, and you and I are just talking shop. But then the minute a camera comes out or someone asks for that, they almost flick a switch and they put on this new persona
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
I have to be very careful about what I say and don't
Yeah.
say, and it's almost subconscious that they flick into it. Whereas they thought, oh, I thought we could just relax and I wasn't working, but now it's kind of like I'm working, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought I could be the bad person that I hide from everybody all the time. And
Yeah,
now I
feels
gotta be
like
that fake
now
good
I got to
person
be
that
on
makes me
the
money.
clock again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say a couple times I've had a chance to meet like Canadian famous people, and every time I like back out at the last second for
Yeah.
weird kind of reasons. I remember Rick Mercer, I think it was, came to
That's
our
great.
university, and he was on campus, and he was literally so there's like this in my university there's like this long tunnel, there's a glass wall. I could see him right there. I was literally walking past him, and at the time, just because this is who I am, the level of self-respect I have, I had two pieces of pizza, one in each hand. And so I have a choice to leave these behind or to go see him with the pizza. I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna eat them, and just kept going. Like I don't want to embarrass myself. Like, hey, welcome to Sudbury, just like this.
Yeah.
And the other time I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Olivia Chow going door to door. And at the time, I was like, let's just say in a compromised position without being too gross and descriptive. But anyways, I'm like, oh, this would be my one chance to meet someone who's an important politician and knows other. No, I'm not going to do this. Like, I don't want to rush out or whatever. So I'm just going to pretend I'm not home, even though I'm clearly there. All the lights are on, everyone can hear, and
Yeah.
no one answers the door, sort of thing.
That's a really interesting response to the potential of meeting of a mayor. Like I like that, like hiding.
You ever want to just walk by a famous person and just go, hey,
Hey,
I know, and just keep walking? Like you just to give the acknowledgement of like, I know.
yeah,
I'm not
I
going
know.
to ask for the things that you think I'm going to ask for, but
Yeah.
Oh,
I know.
See,
I know.
that's really
I
interesting.
think that's the way to do it.
It sounds terrifying though on some level
Well,
too.
yeah,
To
it
be
sounds
Yeah.
somewhat like you're some kind of stalker or something, but
yeah. What do
I saw
they
Sarah
know?
McLachlan once I saw
okay.
Sarah McLachlan once at a Starbucks in Calgary. She was with her husband at the time, I think, and their daughter, it looked like. And I went through that whole gymnastics in my head of like, wow, Sarah McLachlan, like, huge star. And I thought, she's with her husband and her daughter. She doesn't want
Yeah, yeah,
me
yeah.
to go up to her and make a big scene, and now other people gather. Like, I'd be ruining her Sunday, And I just sat there and went, no, I'll just stay here.
That's classy. I like that.
that
Yeah.
night at home on her journal, she's just typing away. Trent McClellan was across the room from me. I was waiting for him to come over so I could introduce him to my daughter.
Can't win
No,
either way,
He
right?
didn't even recognize me.
He was too stuck up to come over here. I was like
Oh
a
my
year into
gosh.
comedy, so there's no
Well,
chance Sarah
I-
McLachlan knew who I was, unless she thought I was working
So-
at the Starbucks. Hey, can you change this garbage? Can you
I'm-
change the garbage button? I'm like, no, actually, yeah.
I was
Let's
just gonna
let's.
say
Oh,
something
sorry.
if
Go
I
ahead.
could before you get going. I'm
Mhm.
curious if you all agree with this. The attitude towards picture changing has changed so much since pictures are widely available now. Like from my era, it was like a huge thing because that was the proof that it happened. But nowadays, you could almost say anything happened and it would be believable. And there are so many pictures we don't even have time to view them. Like behind me, there's like a treasure trove of these things, like photo albums, like as a concept that no longer is a thing. But like collecting pictures of that type, we don't show them to each other. We just sort of say we have them. So you could almost pretend you have the picture and there would be no difference. If you were to say you met them, there would be no difference, I think, at this stage.
I think now there's more of a context. It's like a social media currency, right? Like you got to take that photo instantly and put it
Also,
on social media, and that's going to start all these comments, and you get attention, and so it's like that person is actually money in that moment. I think it's
oh,
kind of
so it's
more
the
the.
exact opposite. You think it's gotten more
I
valuable
think
in
people
that
want, yeah,
sense?
I think they
Yeah.
want to
Okay.
share it.
Okay.
They go, look who I met at the grocery store, and they want to have that moment because now they're somehow attached to fame, and now they're
Yeah.
kind of it's their day for a bit, in a way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. So I think it might work in two ways. Like for an everyday person who's not an influencer, I think there isn't a difference. But for someone who likes an online presence, I 100% agree with you. I think you're totally right. And that almost kind of bothers me a bit, the idea of marketing things, I guess.
Yeah.
I have trouble posting anything. I remember I had an avatar picture for a while. I'm like, take this down. This is too expressive. Anyways, sorry to derail you there, Pete. I got a little too excited.
No, I'd like to actually kind of. This is a really interesting topic that I want to get back into, but I think we should do a fake opening now, um, because Trent mentioned when he first started out in comedy years ago, and I thought that was sort of like a good end to sort of start the flow of the show, to introduce Trent McClellan, currently one of the cast members of Canada's absolute political treasure at this moment, giving our hard times and what we're facing in this world. I think it's one of the few bastions of how we're venting our frustrations and our fears through humor and comedy. This hour is 22 minutes, which I think is also having some of its best writing in years. Like really, really, I don't want to be a dick, but I never used to watch it. And then I started watching it in the last like 4 or 5 years because I used to watch it like 10, 15 years ago. And I was like, this doesn't, and it could be that I got older and it's most likely I changed. But I appreciate it so much. I appreciate the voice. I appreciate the context. I appreciate that there's somebody talking about these things in a funny way to sort of take some of the pain and frustration away. And I think it's kind of amazing that you got there. Would you mind just recapping the path from starting out? I know you're originally born in Newfoundland, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is required almost for this show.
It is required. It's a contract that you must do a DNA sample quickly first. And yeah.
But I met you way out in Calgary, and
Yeah.
that's where it seems like you kind of first forayed into stand-up.
Yeah, I moved to Calgary in 2003, went on stage for the first time just doing stand-up, and was like, wow, this could be a thing. Like for me, growing up in Newfoundland, there was no stand-up comedy world. It was like we'd produced some really funny people, but it was more theater arts, that type of stuff. There wasn't a stand-up world. And so before I moved to Calgary, I was like, oh, there's an amateur like night. You can just sign up and go. And so I was determined to just go and try stand-up for the first time. And so I did. Luckily, it went well. I often think what I would have done if had it not gone well. It went well, and I was like, "Oh, you can make a living at this." And there's comedians you can talk to who are doing it for a living. So it was tangible now. It was actually a real thing. And yeah, went down that road, jumped in both feet, and got an opportunity to write on 22 minutes for 2 weeks at a time. Got invited back every year, and then one day I got a call saying, "Hey, man, do you want to join the cast?" And that was 8 years ago now. And yeah, man. And it was like, it's like being an astronaut, There's only so many people who kind of get to do it. And so I feel pretty fortunate. But yeah, that was kind of my journey to it all.
So it wasn't like a childhood thing, like you weren't going, "I'm going to be a comic," all while you were playing in the schoolyard, or was this something that, hey, look at those guys making money not in the oil field?
That's pretty much it. Well, I don't know what your journey was like, Pete, but like for me, stand-up comedy was just something in your television set, man. Like that wasn't a real thing. That was like The Tonight Show and Letterman and Eddie Murphy's, VHS tapes of Delirious.
Gosh.
And it wasn't a real thing. It was like, that's for other people to do, And then once I realized like it wasn't that far away for anybody to try and attempt and see. And the movie Comedian, the documentary with Jerry Seinfeld and Orny Adams,
Tony Adams.
I saw that once I got to Calgary, and I went, oh, there's actually work that goes into this. Like, people, they're not just naturally brilliant where the first thought they have is genius. It's like this stuff is workshopped and it's polished and it's trial and error. And I'm like, well, I have ideas. I have thoughts and half-baked premises that I could go up and try. So once I knew there was actually a process to it and you could just start there like everybody does, I was like, oh, I got to get to an amateur night. Not knowing if I do well or not. I wasn't cocky at all, but I just thought, oh, that's just the first step. And you just see if you have anything there or not. So that was a game changer for me because it was my first peek behind the curtain of what it actually took to be a comedian. Up to that point, it was like, this is like NASA. This is not something people do. And I don't know anybody who's a comedian. Like, what are you talking about? You know? So that was when it became tangible.
How did you do on your first show?
First show was really good. I mean, I did a 5-minute set, and I had, life-changing bits about urinal etiquette. And I mean, to say the ground moved, I think is an understatement. I mean, people, I had an applause break on every word. And that was, they still talk about it, at the club. They do, every word was an applause. No, I'm joking. But it was one of those where it went well. And then I thought, this is the mistake I made. I thought, oh, well, that 7 minutes works. I'll try this other 7 minutes the next time I'm up, because clearly everything I think of is hilarious and genius. And then I bombed terribly on the second show. And then I didn't go back to stand up for like 6 months. I was like, that was the worst feeling in the world. And I don't know if I want to ever experience that again. And then I realized, yeah, you're gonna have to keep working at this, man. This is a process, and it's gonna take work and effort. And then I went back on, and again, I was fully hooked. But it was a cool moment.
That's great. I do find there's a correlation between how good your very first show goes and whether you continue. Because most people I know that tanked their first show on amateur night will often never do it again. But if you do well in your first show, no matter how bad your next 30 are, you'll be chasing that rush.
That was going to be my question, is because I'm wondering how many bad shows in a row before someone says this is not for me. Because I've had a lot of people who tried this, and I don't know what else to say, but yeah, you're like, oh, you're doing that, okay, great. And I'll always look at their stuff enthusiastically, and I'm like, and it's years later, and they're still doing variations on that. But yeah, what's the word there from the experts?
There's some amateurs in Vancouver, at least where I started, that had been doing it like 22 years.
Whoa.
And still basically the same set and not getting a good laugh. Like they got locked into that sort of, I can make this set work. And they never figured out the formula again.
I think too that, like, I often wonder what they hear, Like,
comedy.
You just saw the guy go up ahead of you, and they got laughs every 10, 15 seconds. And then you went up and you spoke. And how often did you hear laughter when you were up there? Like, it's perception. And so I'm always amazed at, like, are they hearing what the rest of us are hearing? Or are they going, yeah, I remembered all my jokes, so I think that went well. And then they walk away happy,
You just stumbled on something I had not considered that falls so perfectly into neuroscience right now. And I think Dr. Paul was about to do this, but I'm going to jump on this is perception and understanding, because we interpret, we create abstract representations of what our senses acquire, and so much of it is influenced from top-down messaging. Like, we have this idea of what it is, and once our senses start to fit that idea, it fills in from our past efficiency, because it's more efficient for us to correct the error and recreate something that we're already familiar with as an abstract model than to format it.
Yeah, if I think I know where you're going with this one, I think there may be differences in how people perceive the same event, basically.
Yes.
So you may have been hardwired, and this can work both ways too. You may be paying attention to the wrong clues, and you may draw the wrong conclusion. So you might see people nodding politely or smiling like, oh, I did a great job, but you're not actually listening to how and when they laugh, or paying attention to whether it's polite or whether it's immediately in response to the joke punchline or whatever. I also think too that your social network that you have close to you can play a role. Like, people can sort of reinforce things you should really stop doing. I have always been the beneficiary of very honest people that tell me when I suck, which is apparently at a lot of things. But that's not something I'm lackey of. And if your network's there to let you know, I think that helps. I think it can also work the reverse way. I don't know if any of you, we've lost Pete. have to wait for him to
right,
get back. But don't worry, he'll come back.
maybe something I said, I don't know.
Yeah. I was just going to add that I think it can work the reverse way too, because there might be people that are funny or do things that are funny that don't recognize it or don't realize it because they always convince themselves it's not special, it's not creative, it's not important. But yeah, that absolutely happens. And that happens for interpreting life events or interpreting other things too.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think too with stand up, the best comedians in terms of like if you were to say, well, objectively how well that person did and they got a lot of laughs. I think what they focus on is the things that don't hit. That's
Yeah.
where their focus is. Their focus is that line was supposed to get a laugh.
Yeah, and it didn't. What
That's
did I
echoing
do?
in their head.
Yeah.
So they walk off stage going, you know, I've seen the opposite happen. I'm sure you have too, Pete, where people go, oh, Pete, man, great set. That was amazing. And all you can think about is that one line that didn't hit the way you thought it would hit. And that's your focus now. That's like, yeah, it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And everyone's like, what's he talking about? He destroyed it. They loved it. But you had your own standard in your head, which was that line was supposed to get that hit. And I think the most successful and the happiest, I might add, because I think that's a factor, they're also aware. They're aware that I have a certain standard I'm trying to meet, and I didn't meet it tonight.
I have a pretty bad reputation for that, actually. Like people, hey, great set. Fuck you. That's been terrible.
It seems almost insulting for someone to point out how
bullshit.
Yeah, but I think this is the interesting thing too. When I look at interviews with very high level performers across all things, whether it's music or whatever, they're not very, I find, as self-satisfied people. They might be perceived as arrogant a lot of the time, but when you actually listen to what they say, they may be dissatisfied with their films or like this one's emotionally incomplete and stuff. And I guess from what I'm hearing from you all, the same is true for you. It's like you think of the misses and stuff. Like whenever I say something and it doesn't connect, I'm like, I'm never saying that again. I can't imagine a comedian having that road because it's like, no, those are your jokes. You have to fix them or whatever, right?
But in a way that comes with expertise. So like it relates to sort of like the FFS center of our brains, like how we recognize faces and we become incredibly detailed at recognition. So because we're so expert at recognizing human faces, we'll see human faces in a lot of things.
Yeah. You're hardwired for that. Yeah.
But that same sort of hardwiring effect comes with being an expertise in any zone. They did these tests with people like that were expert at dog breeding and things like that. And they would have similar sort of obfuscations and difficulties in sort of just generalizing because they would see it for such detailed flaws. Like they turn it upside down and go, what is this? And they wouldn't see it because the flaws would sort of interact with it, whereas somebody that wasn't an expert could recognize it. I think stand-up similar to that is as you get better with it, you become very noticeable of the subtle mistakes and the opportunities that are missed in a similar way.
I was going to say, so I think was it like fusiform face area you're talking about for that? Yeah. So we're sort of hardwired to recognize certain things. But jumping off of that, actually, so this is something I've recognized overall, and correct me if I'm wrong, you all being the experts, but as someone who's very familiar with an area and knows a lot of the material there tends to be more discriminating and tends to enjoy certain things less. Like as a casual listener or a casual follower or something, I'm always embarrassed to admit my taste to like, an aficionado or whatever. It's like, oh no, that was too basic what I said. I like the show or whatever. So there's this idea, and there's some evidence to support it, that if you're very familiar with something, you're an expert in it, you're in a way less satisfied with it overall, not just your own work, but other things too. I don't know if it's actually like that for you, and I'm genuinely curious. Is this like a lab illusion, or does that reflect your experience?
Yeah, for me, it's like I always wish I could go back to the first day I went to a live comedy show because that magic moment, it was almost like going to a Rocky movie when you were a kid and you just came out of the theater like just bouncing up and down and you were like, that's possible, like just the adrenaline. And then once you get into the business, and that affects it too, like there's the art and the craft of it, but then there's the business side of it, and that kind of puts a cloud over things. And you start learning there's formulas and there's techniques and there's a reason why that thing worked. So the magic part of it tends to wash away a little bit, and you start going, okay, yeah, I know how he did that. Now I can still enjoy another stand-up comedian and go, wow, that was hilariously funny. I really enjoyed that. And your mind is blown, but it doesn't happen as often now that you're in it because you know the mechanics, you know how the sausage is made. And what blows my mind about what we were talking about comedians doing the same stuff for 20 years and it's not working, is that how do you develop a level of expertise in something? It can't be time. Because as you said, there's people who are doing it for 20 years who still don't realize that thing is not working. And that's why I feel comedy it involves humility so much. Everyone thinks it comes from confidence and arrogance and look at me, I've got a mic, everyone's going to shut up and listen to me. It comes with a lot of humility and being honest, like that didn't work. And that line that I thought was going to hit did not hit. And so you've got to go back to the drawing board again. And I think you need both in equal measure.
I think Seinfeld has this whole bit on, I don't know if he says it exactly this way, but it's like it's very meritocratic. Like basically, if you're funny, there'll be people there, and that's what you should be tracking. It's not something you can fake very easily. So tracking well, yeah, and that's been my experience too. Whenever talking to somebody like that, they're always like very self-critical overall. Oh my gosh.
I think humility is something that I think is culturally across the board, not just in comedy, absent to being included in the factors for developing, because we're counter messaged constantly that like I can't think of any archetypes of sort of cultural presence right now that stress humility, even though it was once considered one of the most important virtues. It's not in an age where you got to get clicks. Humility doesn't click.
Yeah, that would be the best TikTok video in the world. I'm bad at certain things and good at others. Please tell me. What is this? Yeah, it doesn't track well.
In academia as well, intellectual humility is vital, and I think that's also one of the reasons why you see people that are more autodidactic, that study on their own, fall into patterns of problematic, beliefs, and because they're not getting pushback and they're not getting tested, and that's kind of with stand-up as well. That pushback is what you're kind of talking about with the humility and also hearing authentically. You don't want to overhear it, but you don't want to underhear it. But you got to have pushback. You got to have something to go, oh fuck, that needs to work harder on that. And that's a really great point, Trent. Humility.
I also think too that's why mental health is so important, because if you have all your eggs of happiness and joy and fulfillment in this set going really well and it doesn't go well, you're gonna push back. You're not open to criticism. You're not open to feedback. You're like, I need this as a human being. This is all I have in my life. That's why that's so dangerous to me. Same thing with athletes, right? I have poor performance. This is me. This is my identity. I'm a hockey player. Like, this is what I do. It's like, okay, well, if that's not going well, what do we got left? Like, what else is holding us up here, right? And that's why I feel if I was ever going to do a workshop about stand-up comedy, I'd talk about mental health for 10 minutes to start. Let's build a foundation and some pillars here, because this thing's going to kick the shit out of you. Yeah. So let's get that sorted. And then now we go into the club and we drive 12 hours in a snowstorm to do jokes for 4 people at a Legion. Let's put that over here.
That's so Canadian, that whole speech. Oh, yeah. It's like, and we went through a cornfield along the way and stuff. There was a bear. These are very
wrong Legion.
Yeah.
We drive to the next Legion. We got to the right Legion. Yeah,
it's a very Alberta feel to that comment too.
Yeah, that too.
We've all done that drive where it's been ridiculously long, scary. And you just think, God, I lived, and now you got to face the angriest people in a bar that don't want you there.
Yeah, well, you've had this too. Pete, you've had this too, where like I'm sure you did a set or whatever, and it didn't go the way you wanted, and in your mind you're like, I got to get it to the next set as fast as I can. I got to wash that off. I got to
palate cleanser.
Yeah, got to get to it, and it's like because you need that. I got to know that I still got it. I got to know that I can still fix this and get to a crowd. Like, okay, the Late Show got me. That was okay. All right. Okay, I didn't lose my mind.
The Late Show versus the Legion in Alberta. It's close in terms of God. Well, you can
trucks parked outside. That's really different.
I always wish you could end the week on the Friday early show.
Sorry, go ahead.
So you didn't have to do the Saturday Late Show, which was always like the drunkest and least hardest show, because your week would be like Thursday was great, Friday early was great, Friday late, Saturday early was great, and then Saturday late show, and then so you'd feel for until the next Thursday of the week goes, you'd be like, that last show,
Is that who I am now for the next 4 days till I get to do another set? It's like I'm the Late Show Saturday level.
Yeah, there's this big thing about how we view our lives. It's like, we're only as good as our last X. So if the last thing is bad, you carry that with you. Like the way you draw upon memories, the most recent ones, the most negative ones are the ones that bubble up top. Like I've been successful for 10 years and I had one bad night. It's like my last night is bad. Therefore,
yeah.
It's like exactly. Joe Coy after the Golden Globes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's really amazing to me, some of those, because like we're in obvious. I'm the last person to point this out, but there's a bit of a shift in terms of the media. Like we're talking about Late Show as a place where comedians would be seen. That's actually, wouldn't say the common anymore. That used to be a huge thing, but now younger people get it elsewhere. And as well, award shows used to be a huge thing where you'd see someone perform and it was a special night for them. And those are just, seems everyone hates them. Even when I think they're good in terms of being funny, they're just never that popular. Like Glazer did one recently that I really liked. I don't know if you all did,
Oh,
but
she was
I
fantastic.
I loved it. I thought that was amazing. It was just like really nailed it. But if you had given something like that, 10 or 15 years earlier, it would have been absolutely huge. It's just there's a difference now. Like people aren't tuning into that anymore. So
I think
kind of
Nikki
it's
Glaser
sad.
actually kind of single-handedly revived it this year to a certain degree with her performance.
It was that good that it would bring people
Yeah.
back. I think that too. Yeah.
And I
it's
think
just
it brought
not
a
good.
lot of people to listen to Conan and see him in a better light. And actually, as great as he did, I thought he didn't push as hard, cautiously.
Yeah, well, isn't that more his style though? I didn't think he was that offensive. Like, am I wrong? He did good
No,
stuff, but he wasn't the edgiest of the edgy, I think.
yeah, he didn't do Oprah Uma Oprah like
Yeah.
like Letterman did.
Well, I always think that, for comedians sometimes, like there's comedians and there's civilians, and I,
Civilians. I'm a proud
and I always,
civilian.
I
Keep
gotta
going.
get a cryon under Dr. Whissell.
Yeah,
Civilian.
civilian. I'll take that label.
and I always feel like comedians and civilians will look at a situation and both think the same thing, like that's a garbage fire, right? But a comedian will walk into that storm. It's like firefighters. Everyone else is running out of the house, and comedians go, I think I got a hose for that. Out of the way. And you go towards it. Like,
Yeah.
so comedians with award shows, you're looking at all these celebrities. They're all done up to the nines. They've got a big media and PR machine behind them. They're there to be celebrated and asked what their clothes they're wearing, and hopefully they win an award. Like, that's why they're there. They're not there to be made fun of and to have their work picked at. Like, it's a hypersensitive time. So if a comedian can walk into that house fire, like Ricky Gervais back in the day, which
Yeah,
was like,
no,
I'm
he,
going
yeah,
full bore.
was,
This is all garbage. Don't come up and talk about
yeah,
your God
yeah.
and give your political
Was it?
message.
I
He's
don't
got a
care.
pint
I
in his
don't
hand.
care. Take your award. I don't care.
Exactly.
Right?
And
Yeah,
fuck off,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
he's got his pint in his hand,
So,
like, I
yeah.
don't care, right?
It was,
That is a hard thing to get
and
laughter out of.
and
Because
I
that's so irreverent.
That's a
think
very
it.
British thing to
Yes.
do, though. Like, there is an irreverence to British comedy where it's about sort of tearing down the structures of society and the pomposity and the aristocracy and the whole, classism. Whereas America is building the classism. Like, we need a new monarchy and aristocracy. These are them. Enjoy, celebrate.
I wasn't gonna say. I think was it Tina Fey and Amy Poehler did a really good job together, and they specifically referenced him. It's like when you're that offensive, they ask you to do it 2 more times. Was the joke they told because it was the right kind of trouble he was creating. It's interesting because, like, controversial for some stances, obviously, but he actually does a lot of interesting work outside of that people have talked about. I think that's not as well recognized either, so it's like kind of complex. But yeah, I agree with you. You kind of have to belie the seriousness of the moment. Yeah.
Okay, I want to kind of go back a little bit to something you said about stand up. Like, you'd start off a lecture or a class or a workshop.
Yeah.
With a discussion about mental health.
Yep.
Now, what are your views on that? Like, overall, how do you perceive mental health and sort of its interaction? Do you have a personal story where you've made some observations, where you've had to make some corrections and sort of, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, I mean, a friend of mine gave me a book. I was going through, my career was going pretty well. I think I was on 22 at the time. And I was in this relationship that was falling apart. And I was like, this is the most money I've ever made, but I'm miserable. Like, I was absolutely miserable. And I was thinking to myself, like, there's got to be more to life than this. This can't be it, And a buddy of mine recommended this book, The Untethered Soul. I don't know if you've read it. And it's about, mindfulness, and about how you are not your thoughts. You can step out of your thoughts and observe them. That's who you are. You're not the person thinking the thing. And dude, that, like, that was the gateway for me to be like, oh, there's a whole other thing. And like therapy, and what stories am I telling myself all the time, good and bad. And it was just like the start to this whole path of like, it can't be about outside success and about having a great show or, you know, being super fit at the gym or being a great athlete. Like these things can't be where your self-worth lies, because these things can be all fleeting and you don't even control a lot of these things. So that was my kind of path to go into this kind of, oh yeah, mental health. What are we doing about it? What is it? You know, we're all just out there reacting to all this weather, but what's going on inside? So that was kind of my road to it. And I think comedy in particular, I mean, as we said, it's full of highs and lows, and the industry chews you up and spits you out, and you're hot 1 minute and you're not the next. It's like, if you ride that roller coaster, like where will you end up? And I've seen a lot of my colleagues, of course, with like addiction issues and all these other things that have happened to them, depression, and it's like you're in an industry that is so superficial at times. It chews you up. So you have to be prepared mentally to go into that world, and the world in general, but in particular in entertainment.
It's interesting. Yeah. So there's a couple of points that you brought up which are interesting. One's resilience that you closed on there, like developing a sort of resilience to uncertainty and difficulties in the world. But then there's also this idea of looking inside for your satisfaction. That's interesting. There's the concept of extrinsic and intrinsic goals. So extrinsic are ones that are sort of socially and culturally hoisted upon us, and sort of the idea.
Yeah, and dogs.
Sorry.
I mean, dogs are also very important for mental health.
I wonder what that dog's extrinsic goal is.
It's to alert me that my wife's home from class. But the intrinsic goals sort of relate to, if you perceive, or at least the theory is, I mean, these are theoretical and they're very hard to test with evidence.
Yeah.
But extrinsic goals tend to have a shorter life of satisfaction, whereas intrinsic goals, things that come from within, that align with your identity, with yourself, that are deep, will tend to have a longer lasting eudaimic or eudaimonic sense of satisfaction and goal. Eudaimonic, I can't even think of the definition of that. It's an Aristotelian term.
You don't need sophisticated words. The argument makes great sense. No, use the academic words.
Well, I'm just
exclusive language is the way to go. No,
I really liked that class because the professor brought his dog to class every day.
Oh, is this? I think I know who this is, and they are an amazing professor. If it's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, like, wonderful.
Yeah, and the wait list to get on it, when I finally got into his class, I was like, yes.
Yeah, it is really exciting stuff, and I think like knowing what you want. So this is a big thing I find. Even you're commenting how you can achieve so much and still feel a little miserable about it. Like knowing what your intrinsic goals are can be a blessing. I consider myself fortunate in this regard because I only like a few things. I've never been confused about it. You never had to tell me what I should be going for. The bigger problem is, the ability to get it. We'll have that conversation later. But knowing those things, I think, goes such a long way, and accepting them and then trying to work towards them, as opposed to going for things everyone else wants that would, your society tells you to get or whatever. Yeah. So I think that it wouldn't surprise me if that bared out in the data. They were saying as well, too, there can be some weird dimensions to this. So I don't know if this was ever repeated, but you can have like intrinsic desire to do certain things, like be creative, like you're going to paint because you like painting, write because you like writing, even if it's bad, whatever. But if it starts to be rewarded, that can change your association with it. Like it stops being fun when you're paid for it. This to me is heartbreaking. Like if you were funny or you were creative or you whatever, and you're good enough that people pay you, it stops being fun. I was curious if you've ever been there. Is that a real thing? Because they've talked about it in psych.
God, because when you first start, you go on stage and just the adrenaline of, I had this thought, I shared it. These strangers all laughed. It's like, it's love, it's acceptance. It's like, what a drug that is. Then as you last longer, you start learning the business side of it. Like, oh, that guy got the festival and I didn't get the festival. That guy made how much on that gig? I didn't make that much on that gig. My agent, we have the same agent, and they sent you out on that audition, and I never got it. So you start looking over the fence, comparing all the time, and it slowly erodes that pure joy you got from just doing the craft. And so So I've had moments in my life where I've been kind of like almost like a chiropractic adjustment, like breathe in, and it's brought me back to like, dude, why did you start this in the first
Yeah,
place? Was
what's
it
it
because of
really
all that
about? Yeah.
stuff, or was it because you really enjoyed making people laugh? You felt good, they felt good. End of agreement.
You just reminded me of something mean I used to do all the time.
You didn't mean things. Who were you in this
Yeah.
past life? It's like you're one of those characters that had the dark past, and we find out in season
Oh,
3. Like,
you're,
what
you're
was
the
it
only you're the
exactly?
only person that doesn't know.
Oh,
um,
oh, now I'm scared. When am I
no,
gonna
no,
find this out?
Dateline NBC.
Yeah,
no, but
yeah.
whenever a comic would talk about what they're
Take a
getting
seat
paid
right
or
over there.
whatever, I
Yeah.
would either vastly overstate or vastly understate what I was making to everybody differently. And I did that for like 10 years so that it would just frustrate the hell out of everybody that got any information through me.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
I only
I
made
knew, I knew, I knew a
$100
guy
for
who
that
used,
gig.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I knew a guy who used to do that with car. He was a car salesman, and so they would get their commission check at the end of the month, and he would walk out and go, another million, huh? Just walk out. The rest of the guys were like,
I
2K. He was like,
yeah.
another mill. All right, see you
good.
guys later.
In a way, I was punishing people for their extrinsic valuations.
So
Right.
But one of my worries about that study, though, always bothered me was that I started thinking about how generosity and altruism is like it's something that's incredibly satisfying, and I think a lot of people that have pro-social motives and anybody that looks inward knows that they can find happiness through helping others.
Yes.
And then when things like Airbnb started, when you used to just let somebody crash on your couch and it felt good because you knew they were in trouble. And then now there's this monetized system that everybody's doing. And I'm wondering if anybody even lets people crash anymore without feeling shitty about, I could be making $100 for this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
just stay over them when they're sleeping, just so you know. I passed up. Yeah, well,
Room.
yeah.
It's 250, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It isn't cheap. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I think you're right. Like all suffering comes from thinking about yourself, you know. It really does. It's all like the minute if you're ever in the dumps, I find this for myself. If I can just do some small act for someone else, not even and also not even looking for the for the thank you. Like you might even do it secretly. They don't even know that you did it. But you automatically feel amazing. You're just like, wow. And every problem and focus you had on issues, it all dissipates. It's amazing. It's a superpower. It's a wonder drug.
Well, that fits a lot of experimentation and altruistic sort of questions.
Yeah,
about
I was gonna
prosociality.
say, yeah, more pro-social behavior, generally better well-being. It's like it's one of those things like, and I don't think the credit is required. I think, yeah, so people wouldn't have to know, you would feel better because you have done something good and you feel there's a validation there, that you can enjoy. And I think even just doing anything like agency and taking acts also helps, So for several reasons, I think, yeah, it just gets you out of your own head for a little bit too, like
Yeah, and what we're talking about the intrinsic, value system that you create. Like, I'll give you an example in stand up of how I kind of recalibrated doing sets, for example. So I go to a club and maybe I haven't been on stage in a month. My old calibration system would have been, you got to go up there and crush because you're doing a spot and the guy ahead of you crushed and ego kicks in. My new system is, Trent, you haven't been on stage in a month. Just go up there, work on this half-baked idea, check mark. Congratulations, you accomplished your mission. You know what I mean? Like the outward thing of like, I need a response from these people to feel good about me. We're not doing that. This is let's be realistic here, Whereas before
really
I would
hard
have
to
the
do.
unrealistic expectation.
Yeah,
of like,
well, that's
hey, I got to bring the, and it's all this anxiety ahead of time and suffering ahead of time. And it's like, for what?
Yeah, I
For
think
what? It's Tuesday night at the Rusty Dolphin. Who gives a fuck?
That's a tough
I
gig
love
to get
these
on,
places
man.
you've been to. The
which
Legion,
is hard to book
we're
with
slowly
Piazza.
producing a map of the prairies. The longer this conversation goes, ever been to Medicine Hat, Moose Jaw? All these other,
All, all the
there's
worst, all the worst gigs end in Fairview.
Oh, okay.
That was my first paid gig. That was my
Really?
first paid gig. Yeah, for $50 or something,
Is it
75
like
bucks.
12 hours from Calgary to get
12
there?
hours,
And
yeah.
then you were in this bar where like they were dealing meth at the back of the room, and they'd yell at the comics to shut up. I'm trying to make a deal here.
Yeah.
That would be really good if you had a recording of that today, like just like this short video where you're trying to tell Jay, "Shut up."
You should do your
I'm
next
back here."
festival
Yeah, yeah.
or
Yeah,
tape.
good.
You should do like a live from the Fairview pub, like
Yeah.
Trent McClellan.
Live from the Fairview pub, back to where it all began. Hey,
Starting Alpha and the Omega.
hey, your camera's in front of the VLTs.
Yeah, I loved planned authenticity, like just the idea we're gonna go back to my roots. But yeah,
It's
A full
hard.
camera crew, and we've already pre-scouted the people we're
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
talking to. That's right.
yeah, it's all his
raw.
friends and family and those people. No,
Reminding yourself when you hit the stage to feel those things, and that I'm just going to do those things. It's hard though. Like I
Oh, it
try,
is.
I run into the same problems, and I got to be honest with you, I fail a lot because I'll cheat.
Yep,
You know,
I've done that.
I'll
Yeah,
cheat,
sure.
and I'll throw the opener in to get the laughs right away, and then I'll throw the strong closer, and then I'll fill the middle with the garbage I'm working on. But yeah, it's really hard to sort of remember that that's not defining you. And there's something weird about identity and identifying as a comic. Once you like when you identify as a comic and your self-worth is built into the way you self-perceive and the way that identity is created, you become more vulnerable to the pains of its failure. And I find that plays into watching. Like you were talking about, I wish I could go back and watch comedy before I did it.
Yep.
Okay, so when I went back to school, I had this weird thing. I don't mean to make this about me, but this is something I did notice. I stopped identifying as a comic after about a couple of years in being in school. I started identifying as a student, and I found myself very competitive and jealous with students, but not but not with comics. And it allowed me to start listening to audio CDs because I couldn't listen to them for like my entire career. A, I didn't want to be influenced. B, I just didn't. I didn't hear it for the what I used to hear comedy for. And then I found it again when I stopped identifying with it. Because my guard wasn't like, I wasn't in competition. I wasn't worried about being influenced. I was just able to sit back and enjoy. And it was something that I loved. And it was like a new thing in my life that I didn't know I'd ever have again. But it came with not thinking myself as a comic anymore, thinking myself as somebody that was a part of me, but I've moved on.
I would have busted right now. It's like, for what it's worth, you've never been a comic to me. That sounds like super insulting. You know, just the way it sounds. You know, I'm sorry.
Hilarious.
But it is hard to break your identity, and particularly with men. This is a source of major male depression later in life with their jobs, because males tend to identify deeply with what they do. And if you look at some of the statistics, I don't want to get dark, but suicide in particular, post loss of job, post identity for older men is very directly tied to their identity with what they do. So that sort of, that's something that it's kind of hard to do. And to bring it to your forefront and realize you're not just what you do. You're a person outside of that is such an important message.
Well, I wonder too if you, for men in particular, as like just in terms of ancestrally being providers, that if you now lose a job, you are not good at that thing anymore, someone tells you you're not good at it, that somehow primally it goes to a place of like, I've let the whole pack down. I've put everyone in danger because I can't provide food. I can't provide. Maybe there's that trigger there. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a lot of statistics on like the association, for example, between job loss and a bunch of other negative outcomes. Like it's a pretty good predictor of depression. So like the jobs and depression have a bunch of crazy associations. Like if your job has a lot of frequent negative interactions, your risk is high. If you have no job, your risk is high. But this does speak to something. I think I agree with you in a sense, like being without that role, because culturally that's the role we're told to have, you know, or it was historically, and we have to reimagine a new one. So there has to be a different way we find our identity in terms of like what we do at home, what we do for our family, what we do for our community, that is different than I'm going to go out and earn money. Because now anyone can do that and some people can't. There has to be an alternative thing we do to find that value, something else. And that's going to be a harder problem to solve, I think. Because I think with
AI will fix it.
AI will create it. That's my argument, because it's going to get everyone fired. You know, it's like it's just crazy what AI can do in so many ways. And the idea is it's going to displace so many things. So we're going to have to start thinking about who we are without this mandatory labor element. Not just men, literally everyone. I think that's the next conversation. So the answers are not going to be easy. It's like, I'm going to bring home the money, therefore everyone's going to, no, that's never going to be that way again. We're
Well, I
done.
think it starts with how we treat other people, though. Like,
Yeah.
not even looking inward. Like, how do I judge my neighbor's success? How do I judge my friend's success? Am I judging it because what they've accomplished? Do I like Dr. Whissell because he's got a neuroscience degree, or because he's a really nice guy? Hey, that's why.
That
And
was so
he's a genuine
sarcastic.
guy. But it's true. Like we internalize, I think, and this is hypothetical, and I think that there is a little bit of evidence, the way that we perceive and judge other people's impacts us. Like, for instance, if you don't feel other people can change, that's a sort of a rigidity that you often will apply to yourself in certain ways as well, even though you'll give yourself a pass more because of, fundamental attribution error and your perception of it. The idea and social constructs that are sort of rigid, that person's bad, they can never not be bad, that's not a reality from most evidence. People do change. People can adjust.
They can
People
change
go
in
through-
some pretty
yeah.
surprising ways, I'd say. I think it's understated. I think it's it requires tremendous effort, but yeah, I think it's understated. Yeah.
And
I
so
think-
if we start adopting that and looking at our neighbors with a more generous and charitable sort of altruistic perception of, like, you know what, let's let go of some of these archetypes, I bet right now this is what Andrew Tate on his podcast is talking about, the exact same stuff.
All of a sudden, I feel extremely
It's a
sick.
simulcast, isn't it? You're simulcasting with him.
Yeah.
Does anyone else feel a little sick right now, or Grant?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like I've never read an update. Well, like, there's some good points there.
Pete, further to your point too, I think like it also puts the pressure on you, because if you're like comedians, for example, right? If you're one of those guys that sit in the back of the room and talk shit about other comics and their set, it puts more pressure on you internally, because you think now everyone's doing that when you go up, potentially. If you don't have a good set, the comic's going to sit in the back of the room and go, So it's like the second you engage in some kind of negative, destructive behavior, you then assume kind of, I guess we're all kind of doing this, right? This is kind of the thing that everyone's doing. And so it only hurts you in the end, because now
Thanks
you're
for
walking
calling
up
me
there.
out on that, by the way.
Oh my god!
I did have to
No,
learn.
dude, like everyone's done it, right?
Yeah, I know,
And
but
at the end of the day, you're like I
yeah.
never understood when a new comic goes up. Like they always go, "It's his first time on stage. Please welcome Jeff." And Jeff walks out, and old school comics just sit in the back of the room and make fun of it. And it's like, dude, do you not remember your first time on stage and how terrified you were and how you didn't move the mic stand out of the way and you were trembling? It's like, why are we hoping this guy gets eaten by the wolves? Because I guess we get some kind of validation, like, look how polished I am in comparison to. You mean the guy who just walked on stage for the first time? You're kicking that guy when he's down. You know what I mean? But it's
I
like,
got to be honest, though, I never feel comfortable picking on new comics. But if somebody's been doing it for like 5 or 6 years,
Yeah.
I still kind of want to poke a
little bit of that.
And I know
You're
that's
like
terrible.
a little comeuppance. You're like, yeah.
But you're right. And to be honest
scary.
with
We
you,
all have it.
that fits into the character profile of one of the reasons why I thought it would be great to have you on the show, is that I consistently remember you always trying to be good and trying to be positive and trying to be kind.
I like that. I
and
think that's
trying
great.
to be from the freaking first day I met you, and it kind of irritated me. You were always really, really nice. And and this is a trait of yours that's it's intermeshed into sort of like the way you perceive the world, the way you treat others, the way that even your comedy has like most of it has a pretty nice edge to it, except politics,
Yeah.
which is quite interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
Where did
go
that
ahead.
come from?
Well, I think with comedy, as I said, when I first started, I started when I was 30, by the way, and I think that's important. So I'd had
That
other
is.
jobs, and I knew, this is a lottery ticket. Like if I can figure out how to navigate this, I don't got to go back to the cubicle. I don't got to go back to. I was working with kids at the time in community centers in low income
remember
housing
that.
areas.
Yeah.
Like it was social services type work, right? Which was rewarding in its own sense, but it was a grind, So once I realized, you could have a chance at doing this for a living. I'd already had enough life experience of working in office culture and seeing how you want to act and how you don't want to act, and that there's a level of professionalism that's required for any job, even ours, as silly as it is. There's still a level of professionalism and respect that's required. And so that's kind of how I shape my comedy as well. It's like I don't always have to be right. I don't always have to win. Sometimes the world kicks the shit out of me, and like that's okay too. But politics, and I've only been this way, by the way, for a couple of years, is that like I've just seen this new culture of cruelty as currency. How cruel can we be? And I'm like, this can't be the way forward, right? Like, this can't be where we're going. Like, why is no one calling this out? How do these people get to the very top? Like, that to me is terrifying. So, yeah, that's when I get a little bit more defensive, a little bit more aggressive, I think, with my thoughts and comedy in general. But yeah, I think that's where the transition came.
Does that go into your personal life too? Do you like use comedy in a positive, sort of constructive manner? Like when you were dealing with kids and like, you know, interpersonal relationships, trauma, like, do you find yourself making jokes when the pain pops up or?
Totally, yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, I was a black kid growing up in a pretty much all white town. I was raised by my grandparents. I mean, I couldn't have been more of an outsider, right? So my sense of humor developed to try and control situations. Like, if you're going to stare at me, then I'm going to give you something, a positive reason to stare at me. And I'll be the center of attention for a good reason as opposed to something that was negative, you know? So that developed really early for me. So I think walking on stage and having 300 people look at me at the same time, I'm like, oh, this is like the cafeteria at lunchtime. Like, just, there he is. Oh, hey, nice afro, you know? Like, that was, so I think there's something inside me that made me feel like that was normal, you know?
Huh.
And that's where that sense of humor developed, for sure, 1,000%. Now, did I know I was going to go on to be a comedian? No, but I knew that sense of humor allows me to have some control over my environment and control the weather systems a little bit.
How does that sort of play out? Professor Whissell, I'm kind of curious about like, in terms of deflection of pain, deflection of like using comedy for that, is there a basis for
Yeah,
that?
so there are some theories about what comedy is and what it's for. So one of the big theories is comedy is about like benign violations, like things you understand to be wrong, but it's not that bad they're wrong. So that's the first part of it. But as well, there's thought to be different styles of comedy. There's this popular questionnaire. They basically categorize things into comedy styles. So something may be one of these four styles. So it could be affiliative. These are jokes that are bonding, like lighthearted, not that risque. And then you have like self-enhancing jokes, like kind of like, you know, making the best of a bad situation, you know, a funny take on something inconvenient. And then you have other forms of humor that are like the aggressive kind, and this is one where it's putting people down. This would be like at the playground, making fun of the kid who's different, and that may be funny to your friends, but it's very clear not everyone is in on that joke from the start, and that's like more of a hierarchical thing. And then you have like the self-defeating comedy or whatever in the last category. That's like, you know, in a sense, capitalizing on your own misfortunes and selling them, and people are laughing, but they've looked at each of these and their correlation with that's relationship with other things. And when you're talking about stress management and relationships, the first two, like affiliative, like the one you lighthearted one, or the self-enhancing one, you know, like making something funny out of something inconvenient and mundane, are associated with more resilience, better mental health, and so on when you fall in that category. And the other two, even if other people are laughing and laughing hard, in general don't have good outcomes for some involved. So people who are self-defeating all the time, even if it's really funny and works on stage, that may not be good for them. And people who are aggressive in their comedy, that may be funny, but that's definitely bad for some of the people they're targeting, obviously. And the other two more so. And they've done studies of this. Like the idea is that comedy, you can reframe something in a hilarious way. This is true. I had this happen recently. It's not that funny, but it is to me because I was there. Our train broke down due to an engine failure. They sent another train to save us, and it had a problem too. Like, what are the odds that this will happen? And we were there for like an hour and a half. I'm like, wouldn't you guess that the two not working trains? And so you can have
I feel
a
in
laugh
Canada
about
that
that.
would happen a lot.
Yeah, is it less common in other areas? Like, I
No,
haven't traveled enough to know.
I don't feel like we fund our trains. That's not a priority part of our country.
Two trains
I wouldn't
forgot the
know.
coal
Yeah.
shovel.
So
The
like,
Forgot the
culture.
coal shovel on
We're
both
on to
trains.
coal. Excellent. I had tons of readings about coal in advance. Oh my God.
you,
That's
so
interesting because, sorry, go ahead, finish your point.
no, I want you to
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
in there because
Let's
this
hear
is
you out.
directed at you.
For me, like when you give that framework, I think you're right. I think I saw comedy as a way to connect with people. It wasn't to push people away. It was to bring people to me and feel acceptance. Like, and I'll be honest with you, I still feel that now. I mean, you walk out on stage in front of 10,000 people, 1,000 people, and you get a bunch of strangers all laughing at the same moment when you relay this thought or concept. I mean, to me, that's like the purest form of truth and acceptance, and regardless of race, gender, religion,
Yeah,
where you
yeah.
grew up, everyone in that moment's like, we're on this wave. We all get it. Like, that's a powerful moment. That's a powerful moment. I wish everyone in life, if you've ever been at a house party and you said something funny and six people laughed, and that adrenaline you get from six people
Yeah.
laughing,
Yeah, that's good.
imagine 10,000 people all laughing at the same time. Like, that's, it's overwhelming.
I was going to say, well, first off, I can only imagine it. I think my record of simultaneous people laughing is like two, and I would be one of them. So there you go. But I was going to say on top of that, like the idea of a shared experience is a big thing I think people today are missing out on. I'm not a doomer. I'm not like, oh, everything's terrible now. But one thing that I really feel bad people don't get to experience today is like shared narratives like that. So you're in a club all laughing at the same joke, or in the theater where you all used to see movies collectively. You share in that laugh together and you bond over that, and that view is a view you now all sort of have or buy into. And that was a wonderful thing. But now, of course, we more view things privately. It's so different.
Yeah.
The consumption of everything. Yeah.
But I also do think that's why the live show will always still exist,
Yeah.
because people still want that feeling of we're all laughing or crying or whatever at the same time. And I think there's an energy to that. There's a feeling you can't duplicate in your own home. You know, it's like headphones now too, I guess, right? Where people used to bring like a radio and play the music for everybody, and now it's like everyone's got their own headphones on, listening to their own vibe, and we're not interacting kind of thing. But concerts still exist. People still go to live shows and they watch Adele or whoever, right? It's so there's still hope there, I think.
They stopped our whole city for Taylor Swift, and I was fine with that. Like, this was a big thing. They gave notices on our transit that Taylor Swift is coming. It feels like such a, like it's your high school announcement, just so you know. Like, it was like that, but nonstop for days. They adjusted traffic. Like, it was pretty crazy. But yeah,
I had a
Here's
weird
something
positive
hopeful
feeling
too.
about
Like, I think about this as the profession of stand-up. Like, in this era of phones and us consuming things so quickly, and 2 seconds of a video scroll, 2 seconds of a video, I don't like that scroll. Like, we're in that world. Netflix, scrolling through titles, watch a movie for 30 seconds, not feeling it. The fact that stand-up comedy still exists as a profession, that people would pay money, go into a room, shut up for an hour, and listen to a human being speak uninterrupted is insane. That still exists as a profession in this day and age. Like, I had someone say to me actually a couple months ago, they go, I don't know if you're going to take this as a compliment or not. They came to my show. They said, I didn't go to my phone once.
I
a
would
huge
take that as a compliment. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, kind of back a little bit. Like, and I went, oh, right. I'm competing with that.
Yeah.
I'm still competing with that. Even when you're sitting there watching me and you bought a ticket, that thing is still in your pocket trying to get your attention potentially. Like, it's something that no one ever had to compete with before, right? As opposed to
Yeah, and
moving
you
down the street, or we had to bring the kids to hockey tonight. You still have all that, but
Yeah.
now you got this thing. So the fact that it still exists as a profession is mind-blowing.
It literally has all the information in the world on it. On nearly all of it is right there, and it's just like this extraordinary temptation. Like, I'm here right now. I'm like, oh, it's right over here. Resisting. But yeah, that's a hell of a compliment to get. I really like that. Yeah.
It's also kind of scary in a way that there's such a pressure against it, because one of the things that theoretically I believe in about comedy, and one of the areas I've sort of looked into in my own personal research in cognitive science, is that collective laughing and sharing something funny in a group of people live is not just a cathartic good feeling, but you're actually collectively selecting and affirming valuable ways to think about problems that can be then reused. Ways to deal with stressful political situations, stressful interpersonal situations, stressful sexual shame, stressful different types of things, that when you're in a group like that, you're learning a problem-solving mechanism for an abstract, pressured problem that's shared amongst people that is uniformly contextually understood amongst a group of people. But once you sort of move to an individual situation, you don't have that same sort of collective validation of good or bad for how well it is. So having a group laugh at something about an absurdist sort of approach to sort of an unconventional way of looking at something is sort of going, oh, this has a viability. And having everybody not laugh goes, oh, this doesn't. And that contextual sort of collective assessment of solutions is how we sort of create quality in the way we perceive and interact with things versus just sort of chaos, which is what you'd get if you simply made those decisions on your own.
Right. I think that the lesser equivalent now is sharing things on social media. So someone watches a funny video, I send it to Pete because I think Pete will find this funny. Like that's the connective tissue, which is not the same as being in the same room at the same time.
No.
Doing it, but that is the no-name brand.
Yeah.
Sharing, right?
And something psychologically happens when you laugh with other people too. Like your brains synchronize, your timing synchronizes.
Yeah.
You de-individualize to a certain degree.
There are some weird neuroscience studies on this that I have to mention. This is like so obscure. This isn't actionable. It'll never cure a disease, what I'm about to tell you, but it's just kind of fun. They're studying brain activity in response to events. And or thinking about things. And among two friends, it's much more similar than would be expected by chance. So you could just look at that and predict the likelihood of friendship from the activity. So it's not just that you see things or describe them the same way. Literally, the way your brain has represented them is similar too. Like that's really, I think, interesting. Mind you, people are also similar in other ways, height, weight, and so on, and some other fun ways too. But yeah, just it goes that deep. So
yeah. That's ease of communication though too. That's the bandwidth that we share. Like if you share that sort of base functional contextual sort of brainwave function, things like that, there's got to be an ease at conveying information between two people versus people that have very divergent perspectives and world perspectives, and that's heightened frustration. So bringing people together in groups and sort of lowering the boundaries of that sort of ease, that fluency of information sharing, that creates peace. Creates love, creates happiness.
This is a very podcaster message. We've solved all wars, all conflicts. It's all gone. We just need to get in a room and laugh together at the same comedy.
Well, it's better than 1984 getting in a room together and hating for 3 minutes together.
Exactly.
hate.
But I think too, that's where the term, that's where sense of humor comes from, right? Like it's a sense. It's like I'm at a certain frequency, humor-wise, comedically, and I'm looking for others that are on that same frequency with the same sense that I have. And it's different for everybody. And for a comedian, I'm trying to find that in the room with 300 people or whatever it is. And in our real lives, in our personal lives, I think we're looking for someone who has that same frequency and finds the same things funny. And it's who you'd connect with at school or at work. Like those are the connective tissues because someone shares the same sense of humor. So they're looking through the same lens at the world that you do. When they don't, you go, I don't know what that guy is.
It's very hard to be close with somebody, or intimate with somebody, whatever your interest is, which fine, if you don't have the same sense of humor. Like that's like an early gateway. Like we were talking about this with Darcy. I think like two atypical people more likely to be together. I say this as a very atypical person because you want someone who connects with or responds well to these thoughts that you have. So yeah, it goes a long way. Yeah,
I could never hook up with a girl that didn't like Super Troopers.
Oh, I love that's your litmus test. All right, we're gonna do this.
It was for 5 years. If a girl goes, "Hey, can we turn this off? This is stupid," you're gonna have to leave. I'm sorry, this is not gonna work out.
Yeah.
But it's true,
so
man.
it's interesting because this is a thing like.
That's who I am. Like, if you don't get that, then what chance do we have?
So everyone should list like their core source that somebody has to get. Like, have you ever had that experience where it's something extremely important to you, book or movie, and you're like, I'm going to show it to my significant other, and if they don't love it, I'm no longer in love with them? It has? Okay, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
For me, it was the first Ninja Turtles movie.
Oh.
And after that, it's the original Conan the Barbarian. That's the second one. And these are not great films from a cinematic standpoint. They're wonderful as an audience member. I love them. But it's like, this is what I'm about. Every day, this is what's going through my brain.
Gentlemen, we have just, I don't know if you know this or not, but we have just developed the next dating app, which is going to be called Funny Love. It's
Yeah.
Funny Love is going to be the name of the app, and it's all
Yeah.
based on sense of humor and
Yeah.
connecting strangers with sense of humor.
That's not a
Yeah.
terrible idea.
That would
I
be
mean,
interesting.
In all honesty, I kind of really like that. I'm going to run with that. Okay.
I'm going to trademark that.
So yeah, well, you're gonna have to make money off this somehow. So it's either this or all male supplements. So
I
take a
refuse to
dating
define
app
myself
or
by how much money I make off my podcast. I will say this though, and I'm not going to take a political stance here or anything like that, but I do find myself in times of sort of struggle in politics and things like this. I find myself drawn to leaders that have a serious message, but also have a lightness and a self-comedy about themselves. And I'm going to mention one person, and I don't think he's too divisive. He's not like on the big global scale, but there's one guy that I find just has a real knack for this, and that's the Manitoba Premier right now, Wab Kinew. Mm-hmm. He has a lightness whilst still having an agenda, and all things out here. I don't even align politically with his thing, but I like him, and I trust him because of the ways he's made me laugh in interviews. And I find that interesting because there's this casual ability to laugh at himself in a political environment and a comfortability because it makes me think he's not putting on a front. It makes me feel like he's authentic.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, like, that's something powerful that hasn't really been tapped into that well. I mean, I wonder sometimes, because I don't speak Ukrainian, if Zelensky is one of the reasons why he gained power because of his comedy, but I have no idea because I can't determine the underlying thing. But it does seem like an incredible tool in connecting with large groups of people outside of stand-up.
Yeah, well, I think at its heart, it's vulnerability, right? And so when you see someone attempting to be funny, they're trying to get a reaction. They're trying to elicit an emotion out of somebody.
But it's terrible when they're attempting to be
Yes. When you see it, you smell it. You're
Well,
like, please don't do this. Like,
I love
you
it
see
because
award show hosts sometimes trying and they're not funny. You're like,
the
please
way
don't.
it's reframed, they're all attempting to be funny, but we only call it attempting if they fail.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's sort of
true.
like an intelligence and understanding sort of this equatability of this naturalness. The second people see the strings of
Yes.
here comes the joke I'm telling.
Well, here's my point to that. Here's my point to that. So on our show, 22 Minutes, we talked to a lot of politicians over the course of a season. And this is me being biased, yes, because I'm on the show and I believe in what the show is trying to do. But there's some politicians who won't go on the show. They're like, no, I'm not having that moment. You're going to make fun of me, da-da-da-da-da. But yet, when campaign time comes around, they're going to roll up the sleeves and they're going to show they're the everyday man and they're going to hold the baby and pet the child on the head and try and be human when you had a chance for 11 months to show that side of you, and be a human being and be vulnerable and make fun of yourself and take a joke and give a joke. And now we're going to try and turn it on by you playing the piano awkwardly. Like, it blows my mind
Absolutely.
that they don't get it.
I would like, if a politician can let somebody make a joke about them and take it like a normal person and let it roll off their back, regardless of your bent, that's the best thing you could possibly do.
So some people have commented this was a facet of the recent American election because again, media landscape has changed so much. It's the idea now you have to go on all these shows, the ones who like you, the ones you don't. You have to be there's a new emphasis explicitly on being authentic and showing up to these places and so on, this podcast or that one. And that's like a newer comment. You wouldn't have heard that 5 years ago. It's like, why didn't you go on a podcast? That's why you're not present. Really? But that's where we are. You have to be there. And it is funny because I remember growing up, the two ones we watched is very Canadian, obviously 22 Minutes. And the other one, we all know what the other one is. It's just Air Farce, which was around at the time too. And was those
I thought you were
two.
gonna say Kids in the Hall.
Oh, I did like it. They didn't have politicians though. It's like, okay, here's Preston Manning. Like,
There's not enough gay
that's a very
politicians.
90s reference. I'm sorry, but that was a big thing because that was actually, as a kid, that was my only exposure to them because that would be a show I would otherwise watch. And it's how actually many people are going to run into them. Like, they're not watching things like in the States like C-SPAN or whatever. They're going to see them through these events or talks
Daily
or
Show.
whatever.
Yeah.
Daily Show,
I
yeah.
think they want a human being at the end of the
Yeah.
day. Like
Yeah.
your policies, yeah, okay, you're going that way, this person's going that way. Is there a human being there
Yeah.
for me to vote for? And if I
Right.
never see the human side and you're just spitting out catchphrases and whatever, it's like it comes across as plastic. And that's why I've never understood, like you said, why someone wouldn't just like, let's have some fun. Who are you? Like, you reveal yourself through your humor and your ability to take a joke or give a joke. And I mean, John Kretschmann grabbed Mark Critch by the throat. Like, that was a viral moment.
Yeah.
Like, he was the prime minister of the
It's
country.
funny. I
Kretschmann.
think that Kretschmann
Oh my
and
God.
Mulrooney are neck and neck as the two funniest prime ministers we've
Yes.
ever had, and they kind of both had really long reigns there.
Yeah.
You know, and both
Yeah.
from other sides of the party, opposite ends of things, both funny because they're humanistic. And I think that's something really important in that, what you were just saying, like the authenticity of relating to their humanity and knowing that they're okay, even if we disagree, you have that base. You can
Yeah.
you're like me enough that okay, we can disagree, but this isn't the end of the world, sort of thing.
Yes.
And I do think that's yeah. But here's the problem, and I just wanted to point this out. And this, I think, is I'm going to argue the other side of this, why they don't do it.
Oh,
is
devil's
because
advocate
there are
type
a lot
stuff.
of shrill people who either go, "This isn't the place for comedy," which I hate. I hate hearing that because every place is the place for comedy. It doesn't mean that the decision is made because of the comedy. It's just the comedy is there because we're trying to diffuse attention. And the other thing is that where the people purposely don't give credit for the person trying to be funny if it fails. And I think that's really without pointing pictures, I think the left is a little more guilty of that side, where they go, "Oh, there's person that's..." Well, no, it's because you can't see the terrible joke. It was a terrible joke, but it was clearly a joke.
Yeah, yeah. This is interesting because this commentary is almost independent of how right the stance is or the issue is. It's just like about whether or not they're funny, independent of
Exactly.
that. Yeah,
And they have to be separate bodies.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and I get some things can be tasteless and poor and stuff like that, and there's valid criticisms for that. But it doesn't mean that that's their policy if they're making a joke.
So
I agree. And I also think the challenge now is because we're in the clip world that someone can take 15 seconds out of that interaction and go, "Look what this guy said." And it's like, yeah, but we don't have the full context of the 3-minute interview where he said the other thing before that. And I think they are a little wary of that as well. Like,
Wait till I
everything
clip.
I say could be pulled from this and made.
yeah,
I'm going to make you look like a racist at the end of my editing.
Yeah.
so this is the mean side that we're seeing right
I
now.
didn't say
Oh my
those
God.
words, but not, and that's not what I meant at the thing. And
Yeah, the thing I was going to add too is kind of like I get some things may be extremely serious and any comedy around them should be seriously debated, but I think about politics, I think you have to be able to laugh at it because if you get into the point where you take it so seriously that you're not allowed to even joke about it, I see that as the start of something far more dangerous. It's like as soon as you get to the can't criticize stage, that's like, you're starting to consider them like an idol or something, and independent of the view, that's a dangerous path. You have to be able to laugh or make fun of leaders. You just have to. That's sort of a non-negotiable for me.
I agree. I agree. And I also think just in my personal life, when someone I'm around is not laughing much or I've been around them, I'm like, it seems like they're hiding something. There's something you're not, there's something
What's your
off. Like
secret?
it gives you, I think in a primal way, it gives you red flags. It's like there's something not
Or
quite.
they've got a lot of pressure in their life that is just far away that you can't access. And
Yeah,
I try to think about that too. And also lack of sleep. Oh,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I
There's
don't
a
get
lot
enough
of factors,
sleep.
but
I
there's
cannot laugh.
there's an imbalance, I guess, is what I mean. Like there's
Yeah.
there's something off,
Yeah.
and that person needs something, or I think I kind of look at it that way.
I always
for
thought
sure.
before you go into a comedy club, there should be like a checklist. Have you had 8 hours sleep? How much? What do you feel like? Are you in the mood to laugh? Maybe you'd like to listen to music tonight instead of coming in here.
I've always felt that late night drive-throughs, there should be a third window, and it's the first window. Like, dude, what's going on? What's going on? Fight with the wife? You sure you want to do this? Because once you go down the next, you can't turn around. You know that, right? You have cereal at home? Bananas? Do you have? Like, they just start trying to walk you through.
Yeah.
That's a
save
great
checklist.
idea.
Make
All
it
right,
because
let 'em get the Big Mac.
it's so
We tried.
funny.
We
Just
tried.
the addition, that layer of embarrassment. I think, like, I remember going into McDonald's and seeing someone else there that I knew. I was like, I'm leaving. just take it off. Like that's like seen as the worst thing you could do. And I remember like I joke about
Spotlight
this.
comes on.
Yeah, yeah. When I'm lecturing, it's like, yeah, I want to die as I've lived in a knife fight at McDonald's or whatever. And somebody, I'm like, yeah, right now, I know I'm joking about this, but I'm gonna go to McDonald's as soon as this class is done at Union Station. They followed me there, and they got a picture of me eating a burger. I was like, I'm like, that was super, an extra dimension to it. But just that layer of being observed, if I had known that, I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have done it.
Right.
As
Yeah.
much as I love low quality hamburgers, they're fine.
Well,
Don't sue me. They're fine. But
they
yeah,
say too that if someone says something rude to you, whether you're on stage as a comedian or just in life in general, that you should repeat what they just said,
Yeah.
just to give them that space. So, sorry, sir, what did you just say?
Yeah.
Or actually repeat it. You can repeat it for them, just to have that moment of, let's just sit in this for a second and give you that time to reflect. The person who said it. And quite often people will either not repeat it or they'll walk it back and try and
Yeah.
explain it. But if we don't do that, it just kind of sits out there, which I think is really interesting.
I
used
like
to
that as a
deal with
response, yeah.
hecklers and stuff like that, and I love. Actually, it's one of my favorite things, and I don't want to encourage it if you see me live but I do love fucking with hecklers. And I went through phases of like whenever a heckler would say something about me, I'd agree emphatically. Oh, I am. You're so right. Or and I would find that would undercover what else is wrong. Please come on. I'd get them to unload, and I'm like, yes, thank you. And by taking, and they would get frustrated at the lack of power that their
Yeah, if you're in
meanness-
on it, it does not work. Yeah.
You weren't given resistance, so they didn't know how to. You can't play tennis against someone who won't hit the ball back over the net.
or just grabbing the balls and hitting themselves with them. Yeah.
It's a good analogy. I like that.
There's so many like little sort of subtle things like that I find very fun that sort of undermine the intent. Like what is this person? What are they trying to do by the cruelty and the interaction and stuff like that? And I don't know.
That's a challenge with online, right? Is that we don't have that anymore, right? You can just write the nastiest thing.
Yeah.
There's no body language to read. There's no cues. It's just I write this, I hit send, I stay on the toilet. You know what I mean? As opposed to back in the day, I mean, you're gonna go up in someone's face and say that to them, to their face. Like it was a different time. So
Yeah, there's this sort of two-edged sword that anonymity provides us. It gives us the privilege to ask things while protecting our privacy, if we're worried about, something we're doing, no one's watching, so that's great. We have a respect for that. But the flip side of that is when given anonymity, unfortunately, some people, maybe even a substantial portion, do awful things because you just can't punish them. And that's like, a big thing, like the emergence of the internet troll, like as a thing. And some of the people who did this were otherwise normal in their real lives, which is something interesting about human nature, which implies as soon as the rules are gone, how many of us would, that's a scary thought to contemplate. So I don't know how to resolve that. I like the privacy part. I don't like the other part. I don't know what the solution is.
I think maybe looking outside of it from the troll's perspective helps. Okay, this sounds crazy, but I think part of what trolls do is they think they're lashing out at power. And because our society has so many signaling of where power resides and where true power resides, that they've forgotten that the classical power structures rely in the organization of wealth and law. And they look at it as cultural and social. And so they lash out towards gender. They lash out towards their peers, towards race. In a structured messaging that's taken over to say that this is where power resides, when we know power resides in entrenched wealth. We know power resides in the entrenchment of law. So that's why they were built into constitutional structures and governmental structures. The fact that the small person has to be protected against the inherent design of the structural disimbalance between that power. So when people
This is the
don't
most
understand
elegant theory of trolls that I've heard so far. It's very charitable. I like that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they don't know who they're supposed to be mad at sometimes. Like I think that's one way of putting it. So they lash out at someone who they feel is being treated better than they should be. But
Exactly.
that's not their fault. That's probably somewhere else.
But
And sometimes though, that implies that all the grievances are real. this is the other dimension to it.
Valid point.
Like some of them are like, it's harder for men, and I'm like,
Yeah.
is it? Anyways,
Well,
I'm
generally,
sorry.
too, I find, especially online trolls, if you ever took, a blast from one of these guys online, generally it's usually a man, statistically.
Yeah.
And when you go to their profile, you look at it and you go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Like there's a lot of sorrow there, and like
Yeah.
you'll start reading the posts like lost my job, or
Yeah.
I can't get my back fixed, or whatever. Like inherently there's always a bunch of struggle. So quite often I feel it's just displaced, right? It's this anger and frustration of life in general. And they're just like, it's real easy for me to just unload on this guy, and kind of there's a bit of a
So
dopamine hit in the moment, and
yeah, they're hurting. I think they're hurting definitely. So how they get there, I don't know, but yeah, and they kind of pass it on to other people. So
That's
again,
'cause
like,
we're
what do we
lonely.
do about that? Yeah,
Yeah.
we are.
Let's look at this. We're the demographic. We're the lonely demographic.
I'm
We're
the lonely-
men that
just-
are older. That we get decreasing amount of
get
friend groups.
so depressed when we have
Sorry.
this. So the world's ending, climate change.
But we're not. This isn't depressing. This is discussing a problem. And look at us. You know what every man has to do? Start a podcast.
No, they are. They are. That's what they're doing. They all have one. You were like the last person.
It's just an excuse to
Yeah. It's like, all right. I would
New
love.
friend mechanism.
I would love to just deliberately do the worst one ever. Just like your guest is like your mom
might
or
be.
something, We might be. Who knows? We're going to find out. We'll get some feedback. But a lot of people are. So it is actually heartening to see like people like that self-expression at that level. So my wife was commenting on this, and I think it's a good point. When you look at small communities a long time ago, you just had to entertain each other. So it didn't matter that you weren't good at singing. You would sing to your family. It didn't matter that you weren't good at, writing. You might write something or whatever. We'd do this for each other. And it didn't matter that we weren't broadly famous. Like that's a relatively new thing. And that all sort of stopped once we had media, then it's like, oh, you have one or two podcasters you listen to. So the idea of people making their own things, doing creativity for their own sake, I kind of like, even if the shows are terrible. What does it matter? They like it. Some people like it. Everyone feels better. Just don't watch it. Like you have a problem with it.
Well,
Yeah.
it shows how we're being shaped by like Marshall McLuhan's coming home to roost right here. I mean, the medium that we're sort of communicating from and extending our friends and our social groups and the briefness, the accessibility has all shaped how we're being. It's shaping us more than it's anything else. Like now we're subconsciously always trying to be better at writing. I don't want to put it out there because I have access to it, or funnier because all you see are clips. We're the ones that are completely transforming to this benign sort of communication methods that are just being thrown at us untested for their long-term effects. And we're going, why is everything so fucking weird? Because, 150 years ago, we were sitting around a fire basically. And that was the extent of our reach.
It wasn't like,
Yeah.
Well, I think too that's where you see the birth of so many things like conspiracy theories and stuff online, because people are isolated and then they find someone online who shares the same views they have, and now they're emboldened by that. And there's 12 of us now. And as they used to say, people go like, the guy who lived in San Diego in his basement didn't know back in the 70s that there was someone else who thought the same thing he did, but now he can just go online and go, there's a convention next weekend in Los Angeles? Oh my God. Let me get my horned hat and
It's funny because this is like the idea of conventions of that type is relatively recent. Like when they started them for things like Star Trek and Doctor Who and all that, they had no idea how tremendously popular they were. And now it's a whole like culture and subculture, to say nothing of cosplay. That's like its own thing. You don't even have to like the material that you're dressing up as, but many of them do, obviously. What?
That's me saying I gotta wrap this up.
I'm
trying
not
to
a fan of cosplay.
No. Oh my God. I am a huge fan of cosplay.
Oh, you're killing me here. You don't know what this is?
Cosplay?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry. It won't enrich your life.
Sounds hot.
It is.
I want to thank you first of all, Trent, for being our guest, and I also want to thank you for being like consistently nice. And I shouldn't have to, and don't monetize that. Don't make it think like it's a payment, so you'll stop appreciating being nice. I don't want it to change your psychology, but you have been a consistently nice person for a very long time.
Wow, man.
And you
I
gotta
appreciate you having me on, man. This was a really
Wonderful
really
to
good chat. I
talk
really
to you.
enjoyed
Let
this
me
today.
say, I also thought you were consistently nice. I'm so glad we got to do this.
That's my next special. Consistently nice.
Consistently nice.
live
Oh,
from Fairview.
I wonder if he's lost his edge.
He's extra nice in this special.
So many brilliant ideas too that you casually throw out, like just and here's an idea. Like really, it's interesting to see your creativity, your kindness, and while still maintaining sort of an intellectual rigor inside of everything, and it's nice. I've always noticed that with our conversations, like when we went for coffee in Halifax last time. It's like you would just casually bring up very important, deep, meaningful things that most people would be like, hey, what's a sports score? And you're like, and I've thought about contemplation, how I fluctuate between the realities, Pete. And I'm like, what the?
I did that?
Yeah, you did. You were quite inspiring in that discussion. It might have been that time when you first picked up that book, actually. It was probably around that because you were sharing some of that. And I appreciate that. And now, this is going to air. You're the 5th episode, so this is going to come out slightly after the release of your new special. But let's mention that because you've just taped a new comedy special, and I'd like people to give it a listen. May 1st, it comes out. It came out because this is past May 1st.
It's May 1st on the YouTube, and I wanted to really capture the stuff I was doing on stage over the last couple of years, plus a bunch of new stuff, and wanted to double down on myself, rather than waiting around to be chosen by the man. Let's produce my own thing and just let people see it, and that's all I wanted to do. And then now get in the process of writing a new hour. So really excited about it. Hopefully people will check it out on my YouTube. But fired up, man.
It'd be funny if it's really mean.
just me roasting the audience look at this guy. Look at this guy over here. What's that, a shirt? This guy's wearing a shirt. I'm not good at it. It just...
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you for being with us, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm Pete Johansson, Dr. Paul Whissell, Trent McClellan from This Hour's 22 Minutes Catch Hours thing. We're going to throw some links in the bottom. There's not a second section because we edit this now, so it's all one. And this is great. Okay, so done. Yahoo!